Forge Gang! Alright, so this is Warhammer, and I want to talk about the Maupin the Maupin versus Jason Unruhe debate on Breadtube. So, Maupin, he's friends with Alexander Dugin, I believe, and he's a Christian socialist, and he promotes the idea of Christian socialism, and he wrote a book, Was Jesus a Socialist? And he talks about economic reforms. He talks about a biblical type of socialism returning the church to the lines of what he perceives as collective ownership. Jason Unruhe, he is a scholastic Marxist, basically. He's a Marxist-Leninist Maoist, or a Maoist, a neo-Maoist, that's it. His lines and doctrines tend to push the idea of Mao Zedong thought, the idea of building a world socialist system along the characteristics as controlled and perceived by the state. So, I watched maybe about 50% of their debate, and I was not really impressed. I think that Maupin pretty much mopped the floor with Jason Unruhe. Jason was giving Maupin the bird. He was calling off. He kept saying that he was being muted and complaining about getting muted all the time, and that Maupin was like a fascist. He was basically a Nazball. He accused Maupin of being a Nazball. Maupin accused Jason of not really understanding or giving a thorough dissertation to debunk his claims, or that Maupin's claim was that Jason Unruhe never read anything that he had produced, and that all he was doing was just being emotional, and that it was just purely out of contrivance and was just thoroughly rhetorical and stuff. And so I found both of them to be very edgelordy, I guess. I didn't really care too much for their politics and stuff, but yeah. So Jason Unruhe really got out of control. He really got pushy. He seemed really touchy. He acted like a 16-year-old schoolgirl that doesn't get to have her way at the prom, basically. And he was just getting real, I guess, triggered. He was getting triggered by Maupin. Maupin seemed like he was getting a little bit triggered too. These guys want to be in hug boxes. So anyways, they didn't really talk that much about economic theory, political theory. They didn't really seem to give out much solutions or whatever. And I just kind of found the argument to be rather dull and untasteful. But yeah. So anyways, I guess the talk was about how socialism is supposed to progress in first world countries. They were talking a little bit about Marx, about Lenin, the Russian Revolution, kind of about the progression of Marxism and how Christians can utilize Marx theories or Karl Marx's theories. They talked a little bit about Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels and about political theorems, and about how they could take over the means of production for the proletariat. They were talking about third world decolonization, about how people in the developing countries could properly build a socialist economy, a decolonized socialist economy, how they could properly get together and utilize their resources to raise the living standards of that developing country. I'm pretty sure they talked a little bit about Mao Zedong. They were talking about the Shambara Rebellion, and Maupin was pointing out that the Shambara Rebellion, or Shambara Rebellion, was an anti-feudal Japanese Catholic uprising against the shogunate. They talked about the Taiping Rebellion by the Heavenly Kingdom against the Qing, and Maupin was making the claim that these were Christian socialists, Confucian Chinese Christian socialists. They were trying to trigger a socialist revolution in Qing, China. They were talking about that. And basically, Jason was talking about how this all contradicts Marxist theory, how this contradicts dialectical materialism, how this contradicted Hegelian dialectic. Marxists are supposed to operate along the lines of a Hegelian dialect. If you don't operate among or along the lines of a Hegelian dialectic, then you're not a real Marxist. You have to understand and give credence to the science of dialectical materialism. So there was some talks about formulas and theorems and the like about that. But really, overall, the center pattern that I picked up was that both of them were getting really triggered all the time. They were constantly getting triggered, and they were basically really getting pushed out of their communist hug boxes. Seemed like they were really getting real triggered about their discussion. And yeah, I think that Maupin won the argument. Maupin is not a Nazball, he's a Christian socialist, bro. And Jason Unruhe, how in the world is he going to start a people's revolution in Canada? He has an airsoft AK-47. And Russians don't even use the AK-47 in their army or armed forces anymore anyways. What is he going to do with an airsoft Mosin Nagant or an airsoft AK-47, dude? And apparently this guy is always getting in trouble with the Canadian government because of customs violations at customs. I don't even think that either one of these guys can go into the United States. So they're both Canadian. Anyways, yeah, so I just think it was cringe. Breadtube has some pretty interesting individuals. But yeah, so it looks like communists cannot even agree on how a proletarian revolution would be carried out. How the bourgeoisie would be disempowered and properly overthrown, and how the proletariat would gain the means of production or take over the means of production and redistribute it to the masses. How a colonized or formerly colonized nation would take over the means of production and begin to produce and become locally self-sustaining and breaking out of the shackles of imperialism. So, to me, it was very contradicting. It was very nonsensical, especially on the part of Jason. Jason did bring up some good points, but I don't think that he gave a serious rebuttal of Maupin. At the very same time, Maupin did not really address a lot of the questions that Jason brought up. And it got to the point where they were just basically muting each other, cutting each other off. A lot of disruptions or disrupting that was going on, a lot of disconnection. I just don't feel that that is how you have a proper debate among intellectuals. This is not how intellectuals are supposed to debate, especially online in front of an audience. It's just not how it's done. So that's really all I got to say. So is there any questions or whatever in chat? Any questions at all? All right, then I guess I'm going to end it.